In an ideal world, goods, just like people, would be treated equally no matter where they come from. But in today's trading system, products are increasingly treated differently depending on the passport they travel under. At the heart of this discrimination are rules of origin, which are the criteria customs officials use to determine where a product is made and hence how it should be treated. Today, we start a series of interviews led by Mr. Stefano Inama, senior trade lawyer at UNCTAD and an expert on rules of origin. Stefano, could you please tell us what rules of origin are and why they matter?
Well, you got to think about rules of origin as a passport for individuals. Rules of origin are there to determine the nationality of the goods. And when you have a passport and you travel, sometimes you need a visa, sometimes you don't need a visa, sometimes you can enter the country and stay 90 days, sometimes you can enter the country and have a work permit. In some other countries, some nationals cannot enter. So there is, origin tells you from where the goods come from, and now the goods is going to be treated when it's entering one country.
Thank you, Stefano. We understand this is a critical topic. So what are the objectives of this series of interviews? What are we aiming to achieve here?
Well, basically, there is something moving in the international trading community. We come from a very, I would say, bad background, in the sense that for 70 years, the General Agreement on Tariff and Trade, the World Customs Organization, the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, they tried to establish a discipline on rules of origin, and all of them failed. Now there is a sense, a growing sense in WTO, that at least there should be some transparency on the issue of rules of origin. There is a recent initiative led by the delegation of Switzerland in WTO to make a proposal for such transparency. But also, and very importantly, in the World Customs Organization, there is the updating of the Kyoto Convention, which is about customs proceeding. And in Kyoto Convention, there is a specific Annex K which deals with rules of origin. So it's a big opportunity for the multilateral community to better understand the issue at stake and to contribute to the negotiations, because this is an important and critical aspect of business of every day.
Well, it's clear that some decisions could have important impacts on everyday life. Could you give us some concrete examples?
Well, a concrete example every day. You wake up and brush your teeth, and you look at the toothpaste. It's written "Made in China," or is written, or you're eating something, and the labels are changing, and this, it determines also your consumer perspective, because sometimes you would like to get some quality products. We bring an idea of quality, like Swiss quality for watches or Swiss chocolate. And all this comes with a concept of origin behind it. That's why, it's so important. But also, it determines how consumers behaves in buying a product. But also, the other aspect is that it's becoming increasingly difficult to determine origin. And why so? Because at present, the origin of a product, many countries have been involved in the manufacturing of this product. And then it becomes increasingly difficult to determine what is the origin of that country.
So you mean that a product can be produced in China or Indonesia or Brazil, right? And it's increasingly difficult to understand where exactly the product is coming from.
Yeah, you think about the iPhones or the iPod. In the sense, in reality, that product is assembled in China or in another country from components that are imported from other countries. The screen can be made in China, the microchips can be made in South Korea, the buttons and of this iPhone, could be made in another country, in Philippines, and then they are finally assembled in China. Now, the important when the iPhone is exported from China to the US or to other countries, what is the origin? You must have a rule, which tells you to apply a duty, to apply a certain trade policy instrument. You need to have a criteria to tell you, is it coming from China, or is it coming from the Philippines, or is it coming from Malaysia, or is it coming from India? you need to have a rule. Now, the problem is that we don't have a multilateral set of rules. US has its own rule, EU has its own rule or origin, and they are product specific. It's not one rule for all products. There are thousands of rules for thousands of products, and also the drafting is difficult. And this is due to the absence of multilateral rules of origin, which is an enormous problem for business, because they have to learn thousands of different rules for thousands of different agreements, because also rules of origin is I would say the nut and bolts of a free trade area agreement. When you create free trade, I want to give you free trade to you, not to someone else. And then I need to have an origin rules which tells me comes from you and not from the other partner. And counting how much trade areas we have in the world, multiplying by thousands of products, you become into what it is, a serious problem for business, and especially for small and medium enterprises, which are unable to comply and manage the kind of data that you need to comply with the different origin criteria.
So what is the role of UNCTAD and EY here?
We believe that to fill this gap of multilateral rules is a public good. We need to do something. And we need to do something differently from what has been made so far in the past. In the sense, as I said, the WTO, WCO, World Trade Organization, United Nations agencies, World Customs Organization, they tried for decades to put that discipline on rules of origin, they all failed. So it means that you need to have a different approach. And when UNCTAD and the UI comes to the fore, in the sense that we provide basically two forms in which we can contribute to this dialogue. One is a roundtable annually, which is focusing on certain aspects of rules of origin, and especially the new issues in this roundtable is that we aim at supporting negotiations. So we aim at producing research products which could be used during the negotiation. So it's not academic research at large, but is applied academic research to solve problems. And most importantly, we involve private sector, because when you do research, then the research has to be validated by the private sector, because the private sector is the only one who tells you, is the kind of litmus text. Yeah, it's true, it's not true, it's partially true, it's guiding you. So this kind of dialogue, and also the governments, because the governments have a sense of reality. They can tell you, okay, this will fly, this will not fly, this is impossible, this is feasible, this is a good idea. And then they also tell you how to navigate the dire straits of negotiation. So you need this kind of cooperative dialogue. And this is not possible to be done in World Trade Organization because it's a rigid kind of intergovernmental setting. But in this roundtable that we are establishing, to which international organizations are participating, is a different story, because we have international organization, we have big consulting firms like Deloitte and the KPMG, and we have a private sector. So we have different stakeholders, and we have experts, and then we come up with tools which could be used during negotiation to facilitate. And this negotiation could be done on multilateral level or a regional level. So it's a kind of multi-purpose platform that we're going to set up to be used by these different clients.
Do you already have any specific research topic in mind?
Well, basically we have three main streams, in the sense that we have mainstream is defining product-specific rules of origin, in the sense that, as I said at the beginning, each product has its own rules of origin. And normally these product-specific rules of origin are contained in annexes that are 70, 80 pages or even longer, which details what kind of specific rules of origin you need to comply for this pen, for this booklet, for this glass, or these cameras. They're all different. Now, and they're all different in all free trade area agreements. The problem is, can we have a best practice? Can we have an example rules of origin that we can say to the negotiators, look, this is the best rules of origin which has been where countries have been gradually converging because, as demonstrated, to achieve a very good utilization rate. And that's kind of a work, that we would like to do. A second kind of work that we are doing is utilization rates. What are utilization rates? Because governments are signing free trade area agreements. Recently, the European Union has signed a free trade area agreement with Japan. Now it comes to business to use the agreement. But how do you measure if the agreement is effectively utilized? Especially when are the Japanese goods entering the European Union duty-free, and are European goods entering Japan duty-free? How do you measure this? Then we have customs data, which is called utilization rate, which tells you if the agreement is working by saying, well, this goods has been shipped to Japan, it has been granted duty-free entry, or it has not been granted duty-free entry. When it has not been granted duty-free entry, most likely it could be rules of origin, one of the causes for not having benefited from duty-free, because they could not comply with the percentage criteria, because they could not comply with shipment or the certification of rules of origin. So the utilization rate, tells you, how an agreement works, and tells you also a product-specific level. So it's a very precise mechanism. And also, you also bring, as I said, the private sector to say, yes, that's the issue. That product, when I ship that, is really true. Consulting firms or companies, they're facing on these products, these particular issues because of these rules of origin. And then we can pinpoint to government, change that rules of origin because it's creating problems. That's the kind of practicalities that we would like to bring. And third, there is another issue is rules of origin comes with paperwork. It's not going to say that you come from Italy. You need to have a passport. Otherwise, it doesn't work. So rules of origin comes with paperwork, piece of papers, and there is the exporter has to certify, the importer has to declare to the origin, to the customs, the origin of a country. And there are best practices and lessons learned. Because, of course, there are different kind of systems. The United States is using a system which is different from the European Union. There is a kind of convergence, but there are a lot of technicalities in it. And there, we try also in that area to come up with best practices and lessons learned.
That's a very rich research agenda. So what are the next steps?
The next steps is that we're going to organize a series of podcasts of this nature, but also inviting other experts from private sector or also from other organizations, because we have an agenda also in the negotiations. In the week from 9 to 13 December, there will be a working group on the Kyoto Convention, where myself as UNCTAD will be able to participate and make a proposal for a revision of Annex K. And also we will have a research agenda on the three topics that I mentioned, product-specific rules of origin, utilization rates, and customs proceeding related to origin, which will be object of a roundtable next September.
Stefano, thanks a lot. Thank you for watching and stay tuned for the next interview.